Welcome to the AFR Saints channel, where we provide you daily content on your favorite team, the New Orleans Saints. Do us a favor and hit that subscribe button. Be sure to leave your comments below and smash that like button. Who dat?
Let's head to Tampa and talk with Greg Auman of Fox Sports. Covers the NFC South, covers the Bucs really closely. That was said based out there in Tampa. On Twitter at Greg Auman, Auman, A-U-M-A-N. Greg, appreciate the time. How are you?
Oh, doing well. Hope you guys are too. Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely, man. Anytime. So look, the Buccaneers, the Saints, two teams kind of competing for the division. The Bucs really are. The Saints are hanging on by a thread. Two teams going in opposite directions. This is what I want to know about Tampa Bay, because I know we had this conversation here. I'm sure they had this conversation in Atlanta. I'm sure everyone's had this conversation in Tampa Bay, and it's probably gone something like this. Man, they've been inconsistent at times, but if they can put it together, they can win the division. They just have to be able to go on that run. The Saints weren't able to do that. The Falcons weren't able to do that. The Buccaneers are currently doing that. My question, why? What is working so well to allow them to be able to go on that run?
I think their offense is clicking better than it has all season. They kind of struggled to find a real run game the first 2 months of the season, and they're starting to do that. And I think that takes some of the pressure off Baker Mayfield. Defensively, they're playing sharp. I mean, they had 4 turnovers, 4 takeaways Sunday against the Jaguars. They've been an inconsistent team too. So I mean, all it takes is 2 losses, and you're suddenly not in the right place here in the NFC South. But I do think they've recognized in the last 4 weeks the importance of just treating each game as its own, one at a time. Their last 2 games here, 2 teams they've already beaten, so they can go in with confidence. But I mean, you think about that first Saints game, everybody sees 26-9, thinks it's an easy win. It's a 1-score game with 5 minutes to go. So I think they're well aware of needing to play a high level, knowing the Saints are still in it, really should be motivated to try and save things and kind of keep their hopes alive for another week as well. The
first thing you mentioned was the offense clicking, and a lot of that falls on the at the feet of Baker Mayfield, who is on pace to set a career high in touchdown passes this year and in a prove-it year. When you look at the year he had last year, where he played musical teams, basically Carolina, L.A., now back in the division here, but on a prove-it deal. What's your level of surprise, I guess, of how Baker has performed this year?
I think there's certainly some surprise. I think when they signed him, you recognize the value of, this should be a motivated Baker Mayfield. Last year, it was 2-8 as a starter, bounced to 3 teams in 6 months. So I think there was an awareness that Baker had this summer that, hey, this might be my last chance to have a starting job, to be able to reestablish myself as a good quarterback. And I think he's taken advantage of that. The main question I had was whether or not he could keep his turnovers in check. In that, you go back in 2020 when he got the Browns in the playoffs and won their first playoff game in 26 years, he kept his interceptions in check. I think that was 26 touchdowns and 7 picks. And he said other years hasn't had nearly as good, double-digit picks, that kind of thing. So I think that the steps forward he took this year were kind of recognizing his limitations. Hasn't had more than 1 interception in a game yet this year, and that's helped. Obviously the Buccaneers have had good quarterbacks in the past, like Jameis Winston, who are playmakers and can throw the ball down the field and get a ton of yards, but couldn't really keep their turnovers in check. So where I think he's taken a step forward is doing that, and I think he's had a leadership aspect of this that maybe not everybody expected, in that it's hard to take over for Tom Brady, but he's confident enough, cocky almost enough, to try and do that.
Greg, obviously, look, Todd Bowles has been kind of mum on it. Baker's said he wants to be there long term. They're not going to go into that deeply until after the season. I mean, they're trying to win a division and get into the playoffs. But do you see any way this doesn't end in a contract for Baker in Tampa?
No, I definitely. It's one of those where I think everybody's waiting for them to take care of business, whether it's Sunday, whether it's against Carolina in the last week. That they're still in that world. A lot of this division is, where if they lose their next 2, it goes from really good feel-good story to massive disappointment. They're 8-9 again. They didn't make the playoffs this time. You don't know if Bowles is back. You don't know if Jason Light is back, and that flips everything, because now all the things that Baker Mayfield liked about Tampa, he doesn't know if they're there. So, like I said, I think as long as they get one of these next 2 wins, they win the division. He's the guy that led them there. So I think they're going to like him more than any quarterback they're able to get at wherever they're picking, 19 or 20 or 22 or something like that in the draft. And then it's just a matter of trying to figure out the money of it, the finances of it, whether it's $20 million a year or $25 million a year, something that I think his priority is going to be continuity and stability and going to a place that he knows he's had success with, rather than maybe taking more money to go to a fifth team in 2 years and roll the dice on the chemistry and how well he fits in the offense and how well he gets along with his teammates.
On flip sides of the ball to the defense, we're talking with Greg Auman of FOX Sports, covering the NFC South, based out of Tampa. So we're really honing in on the Bucs Saints opponent this Sunday. NFC South on the line, really, for both teams. You mentioned when we let off the interview about what's going well. When you mentioned the defense, you mentioned a really good game for them last week. They're getting healthier, it looks like. I mean, I know obviously Devin White was back out there, had a nice day. Antoine Winfield had a really good day for Tampa Bay. Look, that used to be a unit that was very, very much feared, right? Todd Bowles makes a lot of sense. How close they are getting back to that level now that they're getting healthier?
No, they're closer. I mean, this has been a really inconsistent defense. Not only in terms of who's out there, but how well they handle things, especially against the pass. They've had injuries to both corners who are starters. Obviously, Devin White missed 3 games. They've had some injuries up front as well. But like you said, when they're healthy, when they're intact, it's a pretty good group, especially as it relates to turnovers. I mean, they're tied for the best turnover margin in the NFL. I think they're one behind Dallas maybe for most takeaways in the NFL. And that's kind of their bread and butter. They're not a suffocating defense. They're not a hold you to 185 yards defense. But their red zone's pretty good. Third down, they're pretty good. In the high leverage areas, they're stepping up and playing well.
A couple more for you, Greg, before we let you go, and your time appreciated. You mentioned the secondary and the injuries to the cornerbacks. Carlton Davis right now in concussion protocol. Is there anything you could tell us there about maybe how far he's progressed through that protocol? Are they expecting him to be able to go on Sunday?
Yeah, I mean, concussions are always really hard to figure out because you might feel fine the next day. I think they're going to kind of do the normal NFL concussion protocol strategy, which is wait another day, bring him along Thursday or Friday in a limited capacity, and if he feels well and doesn't have symptoms, you give him to a neurologist on Friday afternoon or Saturday and see if he clears. The nice thing the Bucs have is that they've had Jamel Dean and Carlton Davis both missed 4 games this year, so their third corner is a guy named Zion McCollum, who's played at a pretty high level, a pretty comparable level to those two. So they'd like to be at full strength, but if they're down only one corner, that is one position where they can kind of fill somebody in and there's not a dramatic drop-off. He's not probably as consistent as Carlton Davis, but he's somebody they have a lot of confidence in.
And lastly, kind of looking at the game, because, I mean, it's a big one. And, look, this matchup has decided the division more often than not, it feels like, in the last handful of years. Last year being no exception. It was a game in Tampa, tightly contested. When you look at this, Tampa looks like they have the majority of the advantages, but it's the NFL and anything can happen. What is one matchup that you think is the key? Like, if Tampa's going to win, it has to happen. This has to happen in order for them to get it done.
Yeah, it would start with takeaways is what I would say. I mean, I think the last couple Saints games have kind of hinged on some late turnovers. So it probably starts there, getting the Carr, pressuring him. If you give him time, this is a defense that's given up a lot of long plays. So, not only Olave but Rashid Shaheed are guys that can be dangerous against this defense. I think they've played with a lot of confidence. They've been really careful about avoiding turnovers. They're doing all the right things within this 4-game win streak. But again, they probably haven't been as good a team overall this season at home as they are on the road. We don't really know how Bowles will handle a second time through opponents. Last year they were able to get the wins they needed to clinch a championship, but it wasn't anything they did emphatically. This team has a chance to kind of do what the Super Bowl team did in finishing the year with a head of steam. I'm not saying this is a Super Bowl team at all, but in 2020, they ended the regular season with 6 straight wins. And I think that gave them a dose of steam for the postseason that not a lot of postseason teams have. So they're still going to be a 9 or a 10-win team who's probably a home underdog to open the playoffs against the Cowboys or the Eagles. But I think if they do that with the win streak, I think that gives them a confidence that they can beat a team that probably has a better record in the playoffs in the first round at least.
Saints and Bucs from Tampa on Sunday. Greg Auman, Fox Sports on Twitter at Greg Auman, giving us a preview of Tampa. Greg, we appreciate the time. Thank you, and have a great day.
All right, thanks, you too. Have a good one.
Hey, thanks so much for watching. Please leave your comments. I love to interact, and be sure to hit the red subscribe button below.